Welcome to the League of Women Voters and the Alliance for the Arts Virtual Candidates Forum. Some of the League's voter service activities include candidate forums and voter guides. This information is made available to the voting public to help in their decision-making process. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose candidates or political parties. Happy learning.
Welcome to a candidate forum presented by the League of Women Voters of Lee County in conjunction with the Alliance for the Arts. The purpose of these forums is to inform the voting public of the opinions of the candidates running for office. It's not a debate. There will be no crosstalk between the candidates. There won't be any comments from one candidate on another candidate's position. They will be given 2 minutes to open. They will be given 2 minutes to close. They will be given 1 minute to answer each question. The order of answering the questions and opening and closing is random, to be decided at the beginning of the forum itself. So sit back and enjoy. Thank you.
Welcome. Tonight we will be addressing the candidates for Fort Myers Ward 4. All candidates were given an invitation to participate in this virtual candidates forum. The rules are such that each candidate will be given 2 minutes an opening statement and 2 minutes for a closing statement. They will be in reverse order. The questions will be alternated on who starts first. So we'll start with the opening statement with Mr. Bochette.
Thank you, Madam President. May I call you Clara, and of course, Bill.
Thank you.
And colleagues, both of you good friends, and it's an honor to be in this contest with you. I wish you the best. Why am I running for this office? Pretty simply, I'm highly qualified and deeply experienced in government matters, particularly required of this office. I've served on the city council and know the ins and outs, the people, the personalities, and the policies. I'm very proud of the accomplishments I made in there while on the council, particularly in creating consensus decisions and forming part of the unity. Whether we agreed or disagreed, we got along. My background's a Native family for almost 100 years, Fort Myers High School graduate, University of Florida, Florida State, accepted to Stanford, University of Puerto Rico, Inter-American, Pacific Western, en route to that, a bachelor's, a master's, a doctorate, and a doctorate ABD. I served as a university professor, which is a great experience. I've run my own businesses and worked in other businesses for Acumen, and a 5-time Olympian. As that, I'm very focused on setting goals and making them happen. It's all about delivery. Relations are one of the greatest things we have in government. Good relations, and you can move a policy forward. Bad relations, and it stalls. We're seeing so much of that today. As a nonpartisan, I feel very well positioned to serve any and all citizens. And I'll say to preserve and promote the quality of life that they expect in our community. I stand on my record locally as well as internationally, having worked with mayors in Beijing, Athens, Paris, and many cities in their infrastructure development as they begin to host major events around the world. I feel very qualified for this position. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having me here today to share why I'm running for Ward 4. I'm running because I've just grown more and more disappointed in the management and how the lack of the citizens' input has been for our city. We've had some fiscal irresponsibility over the last few years, and I would like to have some accountability and put that to an end. Equally astonishing is the fact that we have a continuous loss of our culture and our historic value in Fort Myers. We need leadership that's capable of pulling us forward and not settling for status quo. We need a leader who will address the difficult situations, evaluate the data, and insist on action when it's appropriate. Our families have really lost their voice here in the decisions of the city. It would be great if we could benefit from a representative that was a member of the city and a neighbor just like them. My heart and my passion have been for creating a level playing field for all people so that everybody has a voice, all businesses and all people treated equally and given the same opportunities for success. That is what our city should be about. That is what we should be proud of. And unfortunately, that is something that has gotten a little convoluted over the last few years. And I would like to restore that to the city of Fort Myers. So it'll be a place where I can continue raising my children, they can raise theirs, and then they can raise theirs. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for having us. It's a pleasure to be here. I also feel that I'm very qualified and experienced for this position. I would say for the last 14 years, I've been at 95% of the CRA meetings, 95% of the CRA advisory board meetings, and probably about 80% of the city council meetings. I'm a current board member of the Fort Myers Economic Development Advisory Board, former president of Friends of Billy's Creek, steering committees for the Midtown Plan, East Fort Myers Dover Coal Plan. That was in 2010. I've mentored the Fort Myers Teen Advisory Council, guiding them to 2 second-place finishes and Florida League of City video contests, which I've mentored, video production, former board of trustee, Calusa Nature Center, and also started the Fort Myers Film Commission. I'm a bridge builder, and I get things done. And I worked with Lee Trans, with the trolley committee, bringing the city needs and the county needs together with the trolley. Some of my goals, I feel like community collaboration, stronger neighborhood partnerships is very important for me. Of course, one of our main duties is financial stability for the city and increasing reserves. I've been involved with in Fort Myers with workforce training. We need to grow our local workforce, and economic development is very important to me. That's including attracting and retaining small business. We need a strong economic development office. Right now we're just about to hire that person. It's been about 2-3 years in flux, and I'm a big advocate for that, for promoting Fort Myers, and of course building our corridors. There's several vision plans, but we need to take those vision plans and implement them, codify them, and for all parts of the city, East Fort Myers, downtown, the Dunbar MLK area. Let's build those areas, and I'm confident I can do that with my knowledge of Fort Myers. Thank you.
Solinger, you have 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Hello, and thank you for having us today. My name is Chauncey Solinger. I am a small business owner here in Lee County. I was born and raised right in the city of Fort Myers. I've, besides college, been here my whole life. I have 2 thriving businesses and multiple real estate rental properties that I have around the city and in the county. And I'm just happy to have the opportunity to give back. A little bit about me is I grew up in Tice in some of the not the greatest neighborhoods. I was eventually adopted, got into college, and was given a $10,000 loan to buy a car from my parents. And I decided to start a business with that, and that's where I started from. And I believe this nothing to something background is what we need right now, especially with the budget shortfalls that we're going to see from COVID-19. I believe I'm poised to hit the ground running. I do have relationships with some of the other candidates that are running in the county commission, and I'm able to work with any of them that are on the board with me. Growing up in Ward 3 or 2, I do have a lot of friends over there still, and I understand the issues, especially in those areas that we need to address. And obviously, in my ward, where I live in Ward 4, I've met a lot of neighbors. I've knocked on probably 900, 1,000 doors already, and I plan on knocking on every door that I can before the election to introduce myself. I will work hard. I'll work the hardest at any other candidate, especially when I'm in there, to address any issues we have. Again, the biggest issue we have going forward is 100% going to be the budget, especially after 5 months of pandemic that's going forward. And we need a budget guy like myself that knows how to pinch pennies.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Bochette, we're going to start the first question with you. What are the greatest challenges facing the city of Fort Myers, and what would you propose?
we have to understand what a city council is designed for. And that's number one, to protect the rights and privileges of the citizens, the taxpayers, and that means budget. The city basically is a financial oversight. The council is to manage the financial and oversee the financial affairs, promote the common welfare with that money. And for all those who live in the city, whether residents by rent or residents by permanent stature. It's important that communications flow quickly and avidly, internal and external, or short-term fixes. We can get that done quickly. Our midterm during this next 4 years will be to manage this budget properly and seek new sources of revenue. It's easy to complain, but we've got to bring in new revenue. We're maxed out on our millage. And lastly, to sustain growth through the future, providing good fire, police, and EMS. We have, as I said, short,
Okay,
mid, and
your
long
time
term.
is up.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Okay, Miss Bennett-Martin.
The three issues that I see, the biggest issues we have with the city is we have a problem with our water quality. Manuel's branch, which is in Ward 4, just recently dumped 200,000 gallons of raw sewage. And the reason why it dumped it is because one of the lift stations failed. About 10 years ago, our city spent a little over $2 million on doing a filter marsh for Billy's Creek, and we're spending about $100,000 every year to maintain that. And yet we're still not, getting a solution to the problem. We're still trying to figure out why is Billy's Creek polluted. I would work closely with Colusa Waterway to get that taken care of. Our neighborhoods, like I said, need to be brought up to a similar standard of sidewalk, street lights throughout the entire city. And housing is a huge issue that we have in the city. We have very little mixed income housing. We have pretty much pushed all of the low income housing out of the city into unincorporated Lee County. And I'd like to see some of that brought into areas such as Midtown and throughout Fort Myers.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Miller?
Yes, thank you. So top three issues. I believe financial stability for the city, balancing our budget, increasing our reserves while providing top level service to the residents. That's, water, fire, police, public services. And another number two would be building our corridors. That's implementing our various vision plans, fostering strong downtown and economic development of the community while attracting and retaining our current businesses. Incentivizing new development is also very important to offer things that can foster high-tech businesses and attract other businesses. The third, very important, is water quality. That's including pollution and nutrient reduction in our waterways. We just received a grant. I wrote a letter to the governor, and I consult with many of the people in the water. We received $1 million grant that was not vetoed by the governor for water.
Okay, your time is up. Thank you. Mr. Solinger, you have 1 minute to answer the question.
I think the biggest challenge in the next couple of years is going to be the aftermath of COVID-19. There's no doubt that we haven't begun to see the effects on the economy locally. We have, but not as bad as it can possibly get, especially when SBA and all the the federal funds, when they turn the taps off. So once that happens, it could affect the tax base and our ability to fund some of the programs. So we need to take a proactive effort, not a reactive effort, with the budget and making sure that we're not just getting caught off guard, because we know it's here. We know there's going to be issues with the budget. There's just no doubt about it. So I think that's the biggest possible thing that in the city of Fort Myers is going to have to deal with in the next few years.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Miss Bennett-Martin, you will start with the next question. What part of the city budget would you cut first in response to COVID-19 that's caused the defects? Shortage of money.
Oh, okay. The deficit. All right. Well, we have a city budget of about $466 million. And right now we have, I believe, 47% of our property tax goes towards the police department. there is a small portion of that that I think we need to consider better using to help with the deficit. And the money is not taking away from the police officers on the street. The money is not taking away from the services that they're providing. However, there are things that the city is paying for that are a little unnecessary, such as having security guards at our swimming pool. We are paying for security guards to be at a lot of the public buildings. Police officers are, not just having their regular time scheduled, but they're doing time and a half in order to cover added security for public buildings. And I think that's an unnecessary expense that I would cut.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Miller?
Oh, if I would look to cut any of the budget, but maybe provide new revenue sources. For instance, we have a pretty strong short-term kind of Airbnb market, and it's kind of like controlled by the state, which is not great, but we can regulate it. So maybe we create revenue by a yearly fee. There's a criteria for short inspection, and that would create revenue. And we can look at progressive policies to cut where we can. Let's take a look at each program, and if we cut a little bit and get a little smarter and bid smarter if we can when we're doing street work and infrastructure improvements, and I feel that's important. I'm being in the construction business for almost 20 years. I can see that is going back and shaving a little money, and then that's one way we can save some money and create some new revenue.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Solinger?
Well, obviously, like my last question, I do think the COVID-19 will cause budget shortfalls. I don't think cutting police funding is it's not the answer, but it's got to come from somewhere. Either we raise taxes or we cut spending. It's the only two things we can do. There's probably inefficiencies in every department that just has to be looked at, and we just have to go through each department and say, hey, everyone's going to have to take some sort of cuts, and kind of work with those departments to figure out what's the best route to do that, instead of just saying, hey, we're going to cut it from here. I think we need to look at each department and just try to cut some fat off of it everywhere.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bochette?
Thank you. Actually, our budget is around 146 million. The rest is compromised by our $500 million of bond debt. It's not good to be in debt. We need to work on that and get that debt down. And that means we have to do two things, as my colleague just said, that is reduce expenses if possible, but more importantly, as my other colleague said, boost income. The first step statistically is a methodological process of calling for an outside audit, not internal inside the city, but using an outside firm to tell us exactly where we are without any favoritism. We can seek new sources of revenue. I've already identified Midtown, the harbor, Yacht Harbor, and a number of other resources, which will be very prolific producers. And with my connections at a state and national level, I can work very diligently to bring in sufficient income and funding for these projects. Again, it boils down to relationships and the ability to make things happen.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Miller, you will start with this question. What issues would you want to address with the police department?
Well, I think Chief Diggs has done a pretty good job with neighborhood policing over the past several years. They have a lot of programs with the Coffee with a Cop. I've worked with the police department starting the flag football at Stars, in the PAL program, the Police Athletic League. I think those are important programs. They've added some substations around town, but I would think more community policing. I'm a big basketball player. And I'm working with Public Works to open some smaller pocket basketball courts. And I feel like, again, just community involvement is very important, and we're going in that right direction. Do we have a ways to go? Absolutely. But I'm fairly confident of where we've been and to continue that trend and not let up, but just redouble our efforts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Solinger?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. What issues would you want to address with the police department?
Well, I think they're doing a pretty good job. You know, it would be more of just letting them just keep doing what they're doing. I think they're doing what they need to be doing. You know, obviously, I think there's always going to have to be. But I just was actually at the park with my son talking to a police officer, and he was talking about how Mr. Diggs was. They were way ahead of the bar. You know, doing community outreach and training to make sure they knew how to handle cultural differences and everything like that. So I would just say that, like, you know, just if they're doing a good job, then it needs to, you know, just let them do their job.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bochette?
There's two parts to effective policing, and that one is relationships with the citizens, and the other is enforcement. One is what we call soft scale, and the other is hard scale. It takes a balance of the two. We'd like to see it move towards soft scale. This really depends on educational programs, relationships with the citizens in the neighborhoods. I've been very active in the past working with sports programs. Being a 5-time Olympian, we brought many Olympians into the community, the Stars Complex, youth groups, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And of course, we did quite a bit through the cultural aspects as well. The way you win is at the grassroots level. You start with young people and you build in them a motivation to do the right thing, as we had the Do the Right Thing awards, which I've worked with before. But this is really where it all starts, at the youth level. Chief Diggs is a blessing to the city. I think all of us have agreed so far that we're moving in the right direction. Let's keep it going and let's build from the bottom up.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bennett-Martin?
I would like to see that our police department starts using civil citations for juveniles, more so than, and for the nonviolent juvenile offenders. That way it helps get them out of the system rather than just shoving them into it. I would also like to see some more use of neighborhood substations, especially in the underserved communities. And I believe that we need to have our police department looked at with a citizens advisory and the citizens review board for complaints. Probably one of the biggest things is that I would like to see that our police department has less focus on stuff as it does on the men and women. I would like to see that our pay scale is at least comparable to Cape Coral and the surrounding areas. Right now, a police officer starts at about $6,000 less a year for being a member of Fort Myers Police Department than they would if starting with Cape Coral Police Department or with the Sheriff's Department. And I just think that's really doing those that want to serve the city, it's doing them a disservice.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Solinger, we're going to start with you with this question. What plans do you have regarding business development in the city?
Well, I'm being a business owner. Obviously, this is close to home for me. I think that the government's job is not to like start businesses, but just get out of the business's way and make an ability to facilitate an atmosphere to where businesses can come here and thrive. You can just look down Palm Beach Boulevard and see all the empty buildings, even on 41. A lot of that's, especially on Palm Beach Boulevard, a lot of those are old car dealerships that can't be repurposed unless they're just knocked down. And I don't think there's a level of investors that want to go over there and invest in that particular area without some sort of incentives. But bottom line is that a lot of those could just be businesses again if some of the use permits would be allowed. And the reason why they're not is because there's like a 6-month. Once a dealer is out of there for 6 months, there's no way another one can move in without doing new setbacks and all that.
Okay, your time is up. Thank you. Mr. Bochette?
Thank you. Business is all about business. I have quite a background in it. The first thing we need to do is understand there's 3 levels to this. There's what our public services can do, what our private sector can do, and what public-private combinations can do. Reality is organic. It applies to each one of these equally. We are the hottest real estate market in the country. City properties have outscaled the rest of the county. We're up between about 8%. It's debatable 7 or 8 or 9% will come in. We've got good properties. People want to live in the city. We've had a history of giving too much away in tax incentives for people that can afford it and not enough for those who can't afford it. We need to bring downtown business up. Edison Mall is a real crisis we're going to have to face. And this can be done by wise planning. We're going to have to turn to the professionals in this market, knowing that council doesn't know everything. We rely on the experts to bring that information to us.
Thank you. Ms. Bennett-Martin?
What I'd like to see is a hometown initiative for our small business owners and startup businesses so that it can have access to free or low-cost meeting space at our municipal buildings. More grants available for organizations and businesses that serve the underserved community. I'd also like to have our RDA work a little more closely with the local businesses to let them know about what funds and grants are available to improve their business and fall more in line with the other developing in the community, with more development in the community. We're in a great position to also reach a larger market for restaurants and retail and bring companies into several different areas throughout the city. Downtown would greatly benefit from additional restaurants and entertainment venues. Midtown and Gateway are ideal for fostering communities where employees can live near their workplace, and with enhanced pedestrian and bicycle access, it would be a great place for them to be able to work, live, and play.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Well, for an example, Gardner's Park, which 5 years ago, you wouldn't really want to walk around here at night. We've turned it into a little bit of a funky neighborhood. Artists are here. We have some galleries, some restaurants, and it's a walkable neighborhood. So that's just one small example. We need to be flexible in our zoning like they were here. We need to be flexible looking at maybe our impact fees, which is the same for a 20,000 square foot home versus a tiny home. Maybe it's based on a square footage basis. As a member of the Economic Development Board, we've had discussions on incentivizing minority businesses. We talked about, there's a used car, a moratorium. I think that's actually showing some effect on Palm Beach Boulevard. And Edison Mall, we've had the manager, we've given them our ideas to repurpose the mall, because yes, that is very important. And the CRA, they are a good organization, the Fort Myers Redevelopment Agency, providing micro grants, facade improvements. So they definitely need to be part of the equation.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Bochette, this question will start with you. What would you want to address regarding the city's drinking water?
Drinking water is a global problem. Drinking water is a Florida problem. Drinking water is a Fort Myers-Lee County problem. Water is our #1 asset here. It has to be defended staunchly, and there's no doubt about it. We're preaching to the choir every time we say that. Everyone knows it. But what are we doing about it? The sewage spill was not a good thing. We have infrastructure issues that need updating. Unfortunately, the city doesn't have the funding to keep things up, but we have to put our priorities first. While on city council, I worked very hard to clean up areas in the city that had toxic infiltrations from chemical dumps. It was a very integral part of that. Now we're working, when I was on council, of bringing our gray water system and selling it to our neighbors over in Cape Coral for their lawns, because we've got more than we can use and they have less. That provides us revenue and helps balance our neighboring communities out. We have a great deal to do here. Let's never forget, water is life. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bennett-Martin?
To work on our water quality issues, if you're wanting specifically about our drinking water, we have right now the different treatment facilities that we have. They need to be brought up in line with something that is much more current and much more capable of serving our larger and our growing community. If we are going to be taking the time to build and enhance the systems that we have, we need to enhance it for the growth that we're going to be having in 10, 15 years from now, not just simply putting a Band-Aid on it. Unfortunately, with a lot of different areas, we have simply put a Band-Aid on things like the lift stations, which is why we're having some of the pollution issues that we're having. I'd also like to see, because we have a lot of people that are using well water still, I would like to see that septic tanks are resolved within our city, because that is also part of our pollution to our groundwater. And there are plans throughout in other cities that have been able to get rid of the septic tank issues. And I'd like to see us do that as well, so we can end some of the pollution issues.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Yes, Lynn mentioned the water reclamation project, which I believe is $15 million Cape Coral will pay us for us to pipe over gray water. And it also means we're getting out of the Caloosahatchee. which is a big problem. We need to get these sewers that could be leaking, the septic systems rather, that are leaking. We need to get them under the city system, and that's helpful as well. I mean, I've had discussions with the top people from the DEP to the water watchers at Calusa. There's a lot of different factors for Billy's Creek, for instance, and where you can address each one, and we can clean up the creek, we can clean up the Calusa-Hatchie, but it's a bigger problem. You have the C-43 reservoir project and others as well to deal with the Corps of Engineers and the water releases that need to be equitable for all of Florida. And obviously that's a big problem that we're working on.
Thank you. Mr. Solinger?
The question kind of changed. Are we talking about water or sewage? Because I'd like to have the question repeated.
No, we're talking about drinking water.
Okay.
The
All right.
question was, what would you want to address regarding the city's drinking water?
Okay. Well, from the residents I spoke to, a lot of them have orange water, and it has to do with old pipes. There's only one solution: you have to replace the pipes. There's not a cheap solution to that problem. So you just got to identify the areas where the pipes are the oldest, and try to be fair about replacing the pipes that are bad, that are causing that are rotting and causing the water to be that color. As far as sewage goes, and this is completely, I own properties that have septic tanks. If there's 4 feet of sand underneath your drain field, it's very environmentally friendly. I don't think that has anything to do with environmental issues, in my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Bennett-Martin, the next question is for you. What issues do you believe should be coordinated with Lee County for resolution?
Water is one of our largest ones. I'd like to see us work more closely with the Southwest Florida Water Management to improve our water quality issues and improve our watershed. As a trustee for the Calusa Nature Center and Planetarium, preserving our natural resources is a really huge deal to me. It is something that, unfortunately, through development, it has been pushed off, and unfortunately, it is ruining what Fort Myers and Lee County will be for our children and our children's children. Our city makes the mistake of deferring a lot of their road decisions to DOT, and I would like to, well, the county does it as well, but the DOT, their focus is to move traffic from point A to point B. It is not on keeping the integrity of a neighborhood intact. I would like to work closer with keeping the neighborhoods together and preserved while being able to still move traffic. And along with that, working with the green space and pedestrian safety and bicycle paths for the Complete Street program.
Okay, your time is up. Thank you. Mr. Miller?
I think the Lee County Tourism and Economic Development, run by John Talmadge, is a great organization we can collaborate with, and they're open to us collaborating with them. And there's a lot of things we can do together. I think we can collaborate when we had a task force, which was like a county, sheriff's police, city police. We can collaborate with the county with police training. I think there's some opportunities there that they're looking into. I'm glad Connie mentioned the complete streets. That's so important to have safe, walkable, and bike paths throughout the county and the city. So I'm 100% on board of that and collaborating and trying to get that moved along, which just feels like it's a little bit stalled. And then there's there's some smaller things like the trolley system. We're trying to get that spread out in full year. And I think there is now a trolley line that is operating off season. So that's another smaller but important issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Solinger?
Again, please repeat the question.
What issues do you believe should be coordinated with Lee County for resolution?
I mean, I think the biggest thing in the near future is 100% going to be budget shortfalls from the pandemic. We're month 5 into this. So the biggest issue we're going to have to deal with statewide, not just countywide, is dealing with budget shortfalls in the near future. Other than that, I mean, it's obviously like it'd be nice to have, affordable housing for some of the lower income areas, maybe some actual housing instead of apartments. That would be I think you just get a better, if you're a kid, it's a little more fun to ride your bike around a neighborhood instead of an apartment complex. So I mean, for quality of life issue, I think that would be important as well. But again, this is all about right now. It's easy to say we're going to spend a bunch of money. We don't have it, and we're not going to have it in the near future either. I yield my time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bochette?
Well, this is one of the issues that's easy to complain about and hard to fix. The 800-pound elephant in the room isn't identifying problems, it's finding solutions. Yes, we need better passive green space, better parks, better emergency health care reciprocals, better relations with the sheriff's department, and these don't end. However, to get this done, that requires good relationships and open door policy. Fort Myers is the county seat. We have an advantage of other cities of being able to walk across the street, but if the doors don't open, having worked with Commissioner Pendergrass, Commissioner Hammond, Commissioner Mann, I have these relationships. Whether they like what I have to say or not, we can't predict that, but I will stand up firmly for our rights and get the county to open their budget up, which exceeds $2 billion, and the school board as well. These are the wealthiest ones, and we're providing the backbone for the community.
Thank you. Okay, we start now with Mr. Miller. What is your position regarding the mandatory face mask usage in the city?
Well, they voted today not to have a mandatory face mask, but I think, I'm not sure how I would have voted, but I would think, like, for going into a Publix and going to stores, they should set their own policy. And I think they should probably set the policy of, you have to wear a mask to come in and shop here, because there's probably a lot of germs being spread at these high traffic spots. I think Costco requires you to wear a mask, but I suggested weeks ago to the city council that they, at city facilities, have someone take your temperature, and I don't think that's a big deal. And I think they're working on it, and to keep the city employees safe. So if you're going to a city facility, I think you should wear a mask and get your temperature taken to have access. So I understand freedoms, but this is an emergency, and I think we just, for the next couple of weeks, got to take some tough measures.
Thank you. Mr. Solinger?
Well, I believe I'm the only one that's running in this race that's actually had it. I did spend some time in the hospital. I was quarantined for 6 weeks. However, I don't think it's the government's job to dictate what you put on your face. I understand that it keeps you safe. From personal experience, I got very sick from it. But I think there's going to be there's more issues, and I'm glad they voted to a compromise where in government buildings is fine. I think businesses should dictate that on their own if they want to. If they have a lot of high traffic, it's probably wise to do. So if I go to Costco and they require a mask, I'll wear one. But it's I don't think that the government should be dictating that. And so, and the other thing is if they do and it's fine, it's going to be an unfair tax on the poor. And like who's not going to afford a mask? Who's going to get pulled over? Oh, you're not wearing a mask, and so it's just. I think it's just a nightmare, and unfortunately, it's just part of life right now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bochette.
Thank you. This is a very current and volatile topic. If you've monitored the meeting earlier, there's very strong feelings on both sides. This is when a city councilman has to look to the professionals. We're very fortunate to have one of the finest hospital systems in the country. I think we're 16th largest overall. I served on some medical boards before. Very proud of our ability. I would say first and foremost, let's train our emergency personnel, our police, our fire, our EMS. If we want to look at any way of subsidizing, and the city can afford it, we'll have to look into that, is to provide mask or partial cost of masks, particularly in all public buildings and private, should they meet a standard. We all agree that freedoms are the core of our beliefs, and we would be wrong to mandate because basically we couldn't enforce it. Our justice system would be overrun. So let's motivate people.
Thank you. Miss Bennett-Martin?
Okay. Well, I've actually had it, and matter of fact, I've lost a couple of friends and I've lost a couple of family members to this. So yes, I would absolutely mandate it. The latest article with healthaffairs.org says that the communities that are mandating, the cities that are mandating face masks use in the public, it has a 2%, the daily COVID rate has a 2% decline. And with the continued rise in all of our affected areas, with 33901 being a hotspot, I think it should be. And I've spoken up quite a bit at it and at today's meeting about it as well. Punta Gorda just voted recently to unanimously to mandate face masks and to find the offenders. My opinion on this is that it is time for Fort Myers to really be the safe city. If the mandating fails today, it failed because, well, if it failed, it's failed because our leadership failed us. And I think it is enforceable. I think it is just something that they've chosen not to do because it's an election season.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we will now have the 2-minute closing remarks. Mr. Solinger, you will start first.
All right, well, thank you for having us. I apologize for being a little late. My name's Chauncey Solinger. I'm running for City Council Ward 4. I'm a business owner. I grew up in Fort Myers. I went to Edison Park Elementary. I was adopted around my teenage years, and I was able to get into college. I came back and started a business here in this area. I got a wife and 4 kids. Obviously, I'm running. I'd like to give a little bit back to the city. Everyone else here is highly qualified as well, and I don't want to take anything away from them. But I do think I would do the best job. I do think I can take some of my small business budgeting, especially during this pandemic, and it'll be useful in the near future. And that's all I really have to say about that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bochette?
Thank you. Closing statement, and I'll close right where I began. Why am I running? There's 3 stages of life: learn, earn, return. I'm now in the return stage of life, getting there. It's time to give back to the community I grew up in, the community that fostered the businesses my grandparents and my parents and my friends have all flourished under. We are the fastest and one of the best growing markets in the country, and we can't forget that and just give our good resources away. We need to take pride and premium in what we've got. That means protecting our citizens and making this the city they want to live in. Safety is always job one. Safety in fire, safety on the streets, safety in medical. In doing that, I'll repeat a point earlier. We start with the budget. We ask for an independent outside audit for a fair picture. We look for areas we can realign the budget, and we look for other areas to augment our resources with new sources of revenue. This boils down to experience. It boils down to relationships. It boils down to hometown grit. I believe there's no other candidate that could do what I do, and it's fair to say that I was asked to run for mayor and I declined. It's not my stage in life for that. So when one of the other councilmen for this ward announced he would, several of the unions came to me, and I'm proud to accept this challenge of running for Ward 4. In doing so, I can look you right in the eye and say, I will deliver. As an Olympic athlete, every day was a test. The day I didn't perform could have been my last day. I look at city council like this. This is will be my full-time job. I will not have any other distractions. And my goal is to be a servant leader to those who elect me. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the future.
Thank you. Ms. Bennett-Martin?
Thank you. I'm hoping that I can earn your vote because it's not this running for the city council seat is not a new whim, something that I've just decided to do in the last year or two. I have been going to these city council meetings. I have been playing an active role in our city. I have been the only candidate that has gone and fought with, shoulder to shoulder with our residents against city council for no roundabouts on McGregor, for not doing a gut through road that's going to, come through US 41 all the way to McGregor next to Edison Park Elementary. I've been there when I fought with the city about social services when they were pulling all the funds and the money away from programs that we desperately need in order to give to one city program. I'm the one that's been there in the trenches. I'm the one that has been there and, made my voice heard and, sometimes shared an unpopular opinion with like the face masks of not wanting, of thinking that we need to mandate them. I'm willing to put my neck out there and say what I stand for. You'll never question where you stand with me. I'm the candidate that has done the homework, has been there for the meetings, has, knows the city inside and out, knows where its shortfalls are, and is ready to make some changes and is ready to call for some reviews and make some big changes in our city. And with hopeful the new elected officials into our city council, we'll be able to move forward in a better way, and we'll be able to preserve Fort Myers for what it is. People move to our area because of our palm line boulevards, because of, we're not entangled in roundabouts. Our streets and our neighborhoods have value. And I'm the candidate that will fight for that with you. And where Fort Myers will have a good future for our children and our children's children. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Thank you. And I would have to say, after listening to all the other candidates, I think anyone that wins is qualified and will do a good job. I would have to say that in the last 14 years, between the CRA Advisory, City Council, Planning Board, all the charrettes, I have been to more meetings by far than most of the people here. And I'm not just a passive listener. If those of you who know me to fight, I've been fighting for better and more Parks and Rec, and combated and fought for those issues for many years. I think we've come a long way and we have a good Parks and Rec department. We just need more and better equipment. And I think that's really important. Other important things is, my family. And I think I'm from Miami. I've lived here for about 15 years and I've been involved in the city happenings. And I love the city. And that's why I want to give back, like Liston says. And I feel like, some of the things, that are important to me that I discussed is, with the water quality and building our corridors and, fostering economic development throughout the whole city, bringing in new revenue. And is that going to be naming rights for our parks? I don't know. We have a great marina that we can do a proposal on, get a world-class marina there downtown. There's a lot of things that we can do. I mean, the hotel, I support the hotel. I think that's going to help with our convention business, which was the county contributed. They realized the value of conventions to all the businesses. So I feel I'm very qualified. I can hit the ground running. I'm ready to tackle these issues. And I want to thank you for the womanly voters for this forum. And thank you to all the other candidates here tonight.
Thank you. The League of Women Voters and the Alliance for the Arts wish to thank the candidates for Ward 4 for participating this evening in the virtual candidate forum.